All right. Welcome for our today's Tandem Coaching Academy's podcast, Keeping Agile Non-Denominational. Here's your co-host, Shri Silas, and I, Alex Kudnov. And today we have a special guest. We have Pradeep Narayanaswamy. And I want to start with one of the feedback to her books I read on Amazon. Pradeepa is a fearless leader, advocate, and a coach, and she is encouraging dialogue around infertility. Her work deftly explores the deeply personal and intimate side of issues surrounding fertility for all involved, bringing a desperately needed holistic approach to health, healing, happiness, and fulfillment. I consider this a must read for anyone experiencing fertility challenges and their loved ones. Pradeepa, welcome. And
Thank
our
you.
first question for you: how did you get on the path of fertility coach?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Shri, for having me. It's been my absolute honor to be here with you today. Yeah, that's that's a really interesting question, Alex. It actually, believe it or not, this aha moment or this insight happened at an Agile conference in the Agile 2017 conference, actually, in Orlando, because until then I had my private practice. I'm an agile coach, enterprise coach, and all those good stuff, but I ventured into life coaching in 2015-16, and in 2017 I was attending the conference, and one of my dear friend who knew about my venture asked me, like, Pradeepa, what's new, or like, what are you, he kind of asked me around this, like, what am I specializing in, right? As a coach. And that was really interesting for me, because I never thought about, like, oh, there is a specialty needed, or I can do that. Um, and somehow at that time I was just answering him, and I wasn't sure where that words came from. I was kind of talking to him about, like, hey, I wanted to work with women just like myself, in women of color just like myself, to bring the best out of them. And I wanted to work with underprivileged people to really support them. And out of nowhere, Alex, I just, the word came out, like, I wanted to work with people who are going through infertility. And when I said that, it was a male friend, and he did not know anything about my past. And he kind of looked at me a little bit funny, and he wasn't sure what I was talking about, because he didn't know the extent of my experience with that. And he smiled. And we chatted other things, and but then I was reflecting back on that, and I thought, like, where did that come from? Like, why did I say that? Right? Like, because there's such a personal thing for me. And why did I say that out loud? And guess what? Like any good agilist would do, I decided to experiment on that insight.
Mhm.
So what I did was, you both have been to these conferences, and Shri has been a prominent speaker at this con. You know how many people we get to meet, or how many people come to these conferences, right? So many new people. So what I decided to do was, okay, if I'm going to introduce myself to new people that don't know me in these three different ways. One is, women empowerment coach. The second one is, underprivileged, empowerment coach. And the third one is infertility coach, right? Wanting to work with people. And I did that. I did that in Orlando for the 4 or 5 days I was there. And every time when I say that I'm working with people, I'm working with people, wanting to work with people going through infertility, there was something, like, there was physically something happening in me, like there was a reaction in me, right? Like, it was like my heart was beating faster, there was like butterflies in my stomach. There was something about that that's showing up different, and I've been observing that. And I thought, like, wow, what is this, like, what is the universe trying to tell me? And believe it or not, at the end of the conference I felt so, you know I don't know what is the word that I'm looking for. I felt so called for, right? Yes. You know what? This is something that the universe is trying to tell me. And that's who I am going to be. And that's who I'm going to become. And you can go and check my LinkedIn post. And after the Agile conference, I came back home and I wrote this article in LinkedIn. At that time, I had about like close to 4,500, 4,000 people, which is a lot of people, and claiming my niche as an infertility coach. It was such a push for me to write that post because it's not a professional thing. It's talking about some of the struggles and pains and the journey that I've had, and wanting to do something about that, right? Not for me, it's not about me being the victim to infertility, but how do I take my ownership and apply it and help other people who are going through something similar in their lives right now. And that post, to my surprise, I didn't know, right? Like I was kind of like one of the vulnerable things that I have ever done, in LinkedIn. And I wasn't sure what's going to happen, how many people are going to think, what they can think of me, what they are going to comment. But it got overwhelming response, overwhelming support from people I know, people I don't know. People were talking, sending me messages about how much respect they have, how much appreciation they have, because they have seen their sister going through this. They have seen, one of the person said, like, they know that their parents have gone through this even though they're really old now, but they know that because their parents had talked about their struggles going through infertility. So like that, people are able to relate. And I thought, like, wow, you know what, it's like the universe has called me to do something more meaningful. Yes, I'm a coach, but I also wanted to support people through something that I have really struggled through. So that, Alex, was a long story to the beginning of my specialization with supporting people going through infertility.
That is such a great story, and I remember that conference with you, and I remember us talking about that, and it was like, that's really interesting. Um, in my own path, I can remember my mom having a miscarriage. My daughter cannot get pregnant even after surgery, and I have a close colleague who's been going through the same thing, and people don't know, they don't realize we go to work, and we're supposed to leave that at home somehow.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful that you're doing this. And I'd love to understand the reaction that the corporate community has given in this support of infertility.
Yeah. So I it's still, in my honest opinion, it's still a conversation. More conversation needs to be had, right? A lot of people understand that very much from the personal side of things, right? Because either it has affected them personally. Shri, I know you said, like, you already mentioned 3 people in your life that has gone through this miscarriage. I'll give you some statistics, right? 1 in 3 women go through miscarriage in her life. 1 in 3, which is so high. And 1 in 8 couples, at least in North America, in United States, in Canada, it's, I believe, 1 in 6, go through infertility, right? The rates are so high, right? Many people do not know that. When I went through this, I'll share a little bit about the extent of my journey. Mine was really long. 12 years of journey, 12 years of going through something like this can be really dreary and painful and lonely. And 3 miscarriages and multitudes of failed treatments, right? So it's a lot, but often, even when I was going through this, I really did not know about how extent this problem is in the world, right? How many people struggle through that? Because when I was going through this, it was, of course, the emotions and the feelings are mostly around me, and it was about me and why I can't have this and why this is happening to me. but but a lot of people think from that angle, not realizing that it's a bigger problem in the world. There's so many people who are going through this, right? So I always say this, like, if you're in a room full of people, there are at least 10 people in the room where they are in that age, about to have children or have children. There is a guarantee that one of them, one couple, or one of them has infertility issues.
Yeah.
Okay? It's so closer than we realize.
Yeah. I'm those statistics are mind blowing to me. I knew that this is a thing, but because it's not my thing, I didn't actually understand how big it is. And and so you're an infertility coach. And while that's really, really cool, I'm not sure I understand what you do.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about what that actually looks like in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for that question. A lot of people do not, right? Because when I say I'm work with people going through infertility, is I coach them, right? Like, if we understand coaching, right? Like, helping them see the future, right? Like, helping them define what their future wants to be. But I'm taking it to people who are struggling with infertility issues, meaning I'm meeting them in their point in life where they're struggling with their fertility challenges. And the reason why I decided to do that, as a specialty, because when I was going through this, the kind of support, first of all, I was so hesitant to talk to anybody because there was a lot of shame, right? There was so much shame that I had to carry through, and I couldn't open up to, not even to my own family members, right? Like, I wouldn't even call family members, not even to my own mother, because in my mind it was about, like, mom, you wouldn't understand this because you have me and my brother, right? So it was really hard for me, and for me, the shame was kind of really not allowing me to open up and to be able to ask or to be able to get support. And what I also was fearing was, I am going to get sympathy from people, right? Oh, I'm so sorry you had a miscarriage. Oh, I'm so sorry you just failed an IVF treatment. Where I'm already feeling sorry for myself, I don't want more of that, right? So that's something that did not, it prevented me from going for support and help. And, you know, one of the other things, I did went for a little bit of counseling, and that didn't help because the person that I was talking to, wonderful person, but they didn't have the experience that I had. They haven't gone through. So in my mind all along, it was a pretty sour experience for me. Nothing against the person, but in my mind, like, I was thinking, you have no idea what I'm going through. You have no experience what I'm just experiencing. So I always had that feeling towards this person. And more so, I did not need therapy because there was nothing technically wrong with me. What I felt that was absent for me was a place for me to be myself, for a place for myself to explore what's going on for me. And I wanted to actually move forward, not try to look at why this happened, why this is happening to me. I'm past that. I really wanted to know how to get unstuck and actually find a way move forward. And that was, at that time, by the way, when I was going through this, I was never exposed to professional coaching. I did not know coaching, something like coaching exists. I knew coaching from sports world, but nothing in life. So when I when of course, this idea came about me when Karthik, my son, joined our family, right? Like, all along my years of struggles with infertility, I wanted to have a family. I wanted to be a mother. And when Karthik came into our picture, that it was satisfied. I could have just moved on with my life, but I decided to stop and reflect back. And, okay, I could have, I could have just moved on and lived a life, but I didn't want it to. I decided like there's something that I wanted to do. I don't want to ignore this 12 years of journey that I have gone through, the 12 years of pain. And what is that I wanted to do? And that's when I decided, okay, how can I support people like me who is struggling right now, right? How can I help them, give a safe space for them to be themselves, explore what they wanted to explore, help them get unstuck, find their energy, and move forward in their life, right? I will never promise that, when you work with me, you'll have a baby. I'm not a snake oil charmer or snake oil magician, right? But what I promise is help you find your own clarity, whatever that looks like, right? And that was so missing for me personally. I did not know that's what I wanted, but I realized, boy, it would have been so helpful if I had a Pradeepa back then. My journey would have been different, my attitude would have been different, my life would have been different, my relationship would have been different. I would not have avoided going to India for 4 years in a row because I was so ashamed, I was so afraid of questions, to see my own parents.
Well, that's an absolutely beautiful story, Pradeep, and thanks for sharing. And what's absolutely fascinating is that just the fact that you put it behind yourself and you find the strength and you found that drive to actually stop, reflect, and say, I'm not done until I make this world a better place, until I help other people who are in my situation. That's what I'm going to do. That's my calling. That's absolutely beautiful. And what I'm hearing is that there are a couple facets to the work that you are doing. On the one hand, you're of course helping other people who are facing same problems, right? And you are coaching them through these situations. And somehow they start showing up more in the organizational context. So it's not like we take our feelings off as we leave our home and go to the office, right? We bring our whole selves there, and how we show up and how actually organization ready to meet us, right, and treat women in these situations is important. So what's your experience in working with situations, and what are you seeing happening these days?
Yeah. And another thing, Alex, I just wanted to add to the statistics, which I think you all will find very interesting. A lot of people misunderstand that infertility is a women's problem, right? So the statistics says 33% is because women has some challenge. 33% is because a man in the partnership has a challenge. And the remainder of the 33% is either the combined effort because both the partners have challenge, or we don't know what the challenge is, right? So it's called unexplained or combination challenge. So oftentimes, it's a lot of people don't realize that men also equally go through this,
Yeah.
right? And we don't talk about that, right? Like one of the things that I always I know I've taken special interest is voicing for men, because of course for women there are a lot of support groups available. Nowadays there are venues to go to, there are people to talk to and things like that, but often those are not the same for men, right? So when it comes to organization, right, if they going through that, they bring that whole thing into work as well, right? And often we do not realize that, right? And our organizations, right, like nowadays, I did the survey that I mentioned to you in our earlier conversation. how many organizations have some kind of policy, HR policy, to give time off for people when they are encountering or when they are having a miscarriage, right? Overwhelmingly, a lot of companies, at least in United States, I'm going to talk about United States here because many of the respondents were from United States. A lot of companies do not. There are some companies which are popular in giving, right? Of course, Starbucks is a very popular example. If you're not familiar with that, a lot of people who don't have um, any infertility coverage through their other employer, they try to take a side job with Starbucks. It's like a barista or whatever Starbucks employment looks like, because Starbucks offers that. That's a well-known fact in the infertility community, right? Now, more yesterday, I just came across a job for Tesla, and they in their job description they say we have infertility coverage, right? I know few tech giants in California, they offer that, right? A lot of I seen, like in the survey that I did, many healthcare systems are offering this kind of coverage or this kind of assistance. Yet, still a lot of other companies in other sectors, people are not aware of that.
Yeah.
Or people think that they have to take a PTO. I had to take a PTO,
Right.
right? It's a sick leave or a PTO. And if there is not even an how do you even tell your boss?
Yeah. Yeah. This is it's a complicated problem
Yeah.
for people. And you're right. I'm over these past couple of years, I've seen things like paternity leave and when you adopt,
Yes.
helping to pay for that and giving
Yes.
some time off. Um, but I agree, it's not enough.
Yeah,
People
it's
don't
not enough.
understand.
And
Um,
often, like I think you mentioned that, Shri, and Alex, you also asked that, right? Our leaders in the organizations, right? First of all, should have the awareness of the extent of this problem and should be open for having a conversation, right? So that they can understand and empathize and help the people in their organization and their team who are going through this.
mhm.
A lot of people are not aware of that. Many people still think it's a women's problem or it's a hush hush subject. I originally come from India. We don't talk about infertility there at all. Now, little by little, right, people are talking. Infertility means there is something really wrong with you. You're
Yeah.
kind of being looked down.
So then this brings up another piece to me that yes, we need to do more. And as someone who hasn't personally experienced it, I'm not really sure what to say or how to react or how to be there for other people, my work comrades. What do I do?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question, Shri. Um, you know, the first thing that I always tell people is, right, tell them, right, like that you don't understand, right? Be honest with them. I have not gone through this, right? I know of some people, but I have personally not gone through this. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything that you're saying makes sense to me, right? But that's on me. But that doesn't mean that I don't care about this. I do care. You are my team member. I care about you and I care about your well being, right? How can I help you, right? It's about us creating, as a leader, creating a safe space for the person, for the employee to openly come and tell that they're struggling. And this question reminded me of, when I was going through my treatments. So the IVF, in vitro fertilization, is one of the very complex treatment. It's not only an expensive treatment, but also it's the time wise, you have to be very disciplined. And I remember at the time, my some of my initial treatments, I was back then working in Minneapolis. And after the embryo has been transferred into your uterus, you're required to take 2 days of bed rest, not moving from bed, right? And I have to use my PTO. And because I was having these treatments kind of next to next, my manager kind of noticed the time off pattern that I'm taking. And of course he can read some emotions that I bring into the work. And one day he was just asking me, like, Pradeep, are you in any pain? He was a male manager. He did not know, I did not know what to tell him or how to tell him that. And he kind of know that something is going on with me. So he asked me, like, are you in any kind of pain? Is there anything that I can do to help you? And even that simple statement of acknowledgement, right? It made me that, oh yeah, he cares about me,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I felt better, right? And we can do a little bit more, right? Like if we educate our managers, is there anything that you wanted to talk to me about? I'm here for you, right? Not forcing people to have the conversation, but letting them know that, you're not going to judge them,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you.
You're not going to, think about, think something badly about them just because, right? That itself can be super powerful for people.
So I'm wondering, and thanks for that. It's my personal experience when I had an employee, and she was open about miscarriage, and I really didn't know what to say beyond just, I'm sorry, what I can do and how I can help, right? So I'm wondering, for our coaching audience, for those who are listening, who are coaches and who are interested in maybe some niches and exploring, what does your engagement look like? How does it go? How you maybe get client, how you go through the process, and what it results in.
Yeah. So majority of my clients, by the way, I do, even though I specialize in infertility, there are other clients who are not going through fertility challenges as well. So one of the things when I started niching in this area, I actually, I'm sure Shri is very familiar with that. Like, I went and spoke in different conferences or fertility related conferences. I had booths in those conferences, again, to spread awareness that this is something that's available for people as a support. Um, I also wrote a book about it. It's a very coaching related book. So because I'm a coach, I don't want it to just give advice, but rather the book has a workbook associated with that where I wanted to help people create and craft their own journey. How they wanted to own their own journey, how they wanted to take control and ownership of it. So the book is available. And I've also partnered with a few doctors in the industry who I can connect with. And again, these are doctors who don't see the person as a medical entity, but rather they see the person as a whole person. And because like I went, when I went through this, I had 5 different doctors in my own journey. And I not any, I mean, like many of these doctors, right, I would say just saw me as a medical entity, a woman with unexplained infertility, right? Whatever, like, you're labeled like that. And sometimes that that doesn't, it's sometimes that takes the humane aspect away from from going through this. It's really hard. And that is something, I was able to find some amazing doctors in our community, and was able to partner up with them and have my information available for their patients. And I do webinars for them, I do send books for them, right? So it, the service that I'm doing is more about creating that awareness and helping people know that there is more than one kind of support. Because often what happens is, when an infertility patient has some kind of emotional reaction or some emotional need that is unmet, they call the doctor's office, the nurse or whoever it is. What they do is they just send them to a counselor, like, yeah, go have a counseling session. I had that too. And what I found was not everybody needs counseling, because the core coaching belief that we all share is, as humans we are not broken. I don't see us as a broken entity, right? Just because I have something going on in my life doesn't mean that I'm a broken person. So that's why it never resonated with me, because it comes from the aspect of there is something wrong with me and it needs to be treated. But rather, from coaching angle, there is nothing wrong with you. This is something that you're just going through in your life right now. How can we acknowledge that? And I see you as a whole person, a creative person, a resourceful person, and let's use your wisdom to help move forward.
Mm.
It's a whole different way of looking at that person. And the people, the doctors who understand that are the ones sometimes, like, refer my name, right?
Yeah.
It's, I would say, right, like, I'm not going to, I'm going to be very transparent with you. Still, a lot of people, right, who can definitely benefit from this are still very hesitant.
Right. So, thank you for saying that, because I had a really huge revelation here that um, about the counseling versus coaching. Right? Not everybody needs that, and it's a really big revelation for me, and so I'm sure it's a really big revelation for some people who are listening today. And as a professional coach, what advice would you give them about getting involved in doing this kind of work?
Yeah, I always, to me, it definitely took a lot of courage, right? It definitely took a lot of courage for me to step into this. And Shri, again, like, I'll go back to the Agile conferences, because for whatever reason, these conferences had molded and made me the person, right? Like, I'm so grateful for that. I said 2017 is when I decided this niche, but 2016 Agile in Atlanta, Agile 2016 in Atlanta, I did two sessions that year. And for one of my session, that was the first ever time in the whole wide world, except for me and my husband and my parents and my mother-in-law, nobody knew about our infertility struggle, right? Karthik was not back in the picture then. Like, we were after the conference, we were actually going to India and bring him, right? The conference happened in July 2016. August, we were traveling to India to bring Karthik home. But for that, in one of my session, right, the backstory, the first 5 minutes of my intro, why I'm doing this session on passionate listening, the backstory was my journey with infertility and how it made me a better listener, a passionate listener. And that was the first ever time in room full of 250 strangers. Somehow I found my courage until that minute before I went into stage. Should I say the story or should I just make something up? Should I say my real story or should I make something up? Whatever happened, I found my courage and shared that, right? So it's finding my courage. And to my clients, I always say this, right? Like, there is a difference between fear and courage. I'll share this. Fear is peeing your pants. Courage is doing what you need to do in peed pants. Fear is peeing your pants. Courage is doing what you need to do with peed pants.
Well, that's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. And Pradeepa, I'm so glad that we have you today. It's not really often we meet such a courageous woman, such a courageous human being who carries this hard and traumatic experience, overcomes it, and actually finds strength and perseverance to help others in the same situation, and find her calling, and find her next move in helping others. That's absolutely beautiful. So what's next for you? What's going on for you as a professional these days?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, Alex, I just wanted to, I wanted to finish Cherie's question, right? Don't don't hold back, right? It's really difficult as professional coaches, right? Um, find the courage. We all have it. Just find it and go with it, because when you put yourself out to the world actually receives it more beautifully than you really know, right? I am a living truth for that, right? On how our Agile community supports me, how my Facebook community, the social media, my friends, the family, right? People who I don't even realize would support me, supports me, right? But first, we have to put ourselves out there. Right?
Thank you.
So thank you, Shri, for that question. So what's next for me? I will continue, right? Like one of my aspirations is to create that awareness, is to create that dialogue, right? I like I said, last year I ended my year by doing this talk at Credit Karma for their DEI group with 35 wonderful people, to hold space for them to have this tough conversation, right? And I wanted to do more of that in organizations so that more people feel empowered, right? Have the knowledge and understand the implications. Because let's just talk from just the business perspective, right? If there is an organization who are having people who are going through these challenges and it affects productivity, who are we kidding here? How they show up at work, we don't realize that. So how do we take care of that? How do we rectify that problem? Right? How do managers and leaders and team members and colleagues, right, create a safe environment for people to have this kind of a dialogue, right? To be empathetic, not sympathetic, to be empathetic, right? And create an environment that's non-judgmental, right? So that's where my heart is earning, right? Like I want to talk about this in more organizations to create an environment where more organizations are coming together and partnering and supporting this, not just a line item in their HR policy, right? That doesn't do it, in my honest opinion.
Yeah. So how can people who are interested, or organizations that are interested, can contact you? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, with regards to fertility coaching, the best way to contact me is through my website. It's pradeepafertilitycoach.com. Or for organizations, my LinkedIn, right? Pradeep Narayanaswamy, they can find me easily in LinkedIn. And that's another way to contact me.
Mhm. Right. Well, thank you so much, Pradeepa, for coming today. It was absolutely fantastic conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm sure Sherry will join me. And I hope that our listeners were enjoying this conversation as much as we did. So thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with us. And we all wishing you a lot of success in this hard and very noble undertakings that you are bringing to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Shri. I really, appreciate you giving me this platform today uh, to talk openly. And thank you for being curious. Thank you for opening this conversation for other people. And who knows, there may be people here and there who hear this and wanting to claim a niche that they were hesitating to claim.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And this was Tandem Coaching Academy's Keeping Agile Non-Denominational podcast. I, Alex Kudnov and Shuri Silas. Goodbye.